That's good. Okay, so now we're recording. Now we're going to lay out the, so the way that matter starts to divide itself is you have the real, the absolute on the outside. Then you have what is called the threshold. And then you have the material world. So those are the three worlds. The real is beyond what we know or fully understand. The threshold is where we go in our dreams, where we go once we've passed on, where we live information that we've gathered, where we astral travel. That's all in this threshold. And then there's the material world, which is here that we do. Okay, and we were talking about the attractors. The attractors are the real being able to come in matter. And it's these droplets of rain, if you want, from the real that come through the barrier of the threshold into the material world. And they're neutral as they're coming from the real. They pick up information through the threshold and into the material world, where they are gathering complexity from their experiences. If they touch you, if they touch an animal, they gather information that they then, when they go back up to the real, they leave in the threshold and go back to the real as neutral. So we were on the attractors. Is that right, you guys? Now we're all on the same page. Was that a good summary, you guys?
Very good.
Good. We got it. Okay. So so we had talked about the attractors. So it's the real. Four different kinds of attractors. And the first one are called the macro attractors. And they are anything that refers to divine forms. So the real, like I said, the real participates in the world, in the threshold and in the world of matter through these attractors. And it permeates everything. So there's four levels of them. The first one is the macro ones. They're, I guess, bigger. And they are the ones that go into the divine forms. That's where they have their experience. They gather their information, their complexity. When they go back to the real, they drop that in the threshold, go back to the real. The other are called the attractors, just plainly. And this we're going to have some fun with when we get there. The human soul, what makes up the human soul? And these are personalities in past lives. So we've got the macro attractors, which are the ones that are for the divine forms. We have the attractors, which are for us humans, past lives, personalities that we'll talk about after. We have the micro attractors, the micro ones. They manage forms inferior to complexity. So they manage the organs, the lungs, the brains, all of that, okay? And then we have the macro attractors, which are the creation, they start to create the geometric shape of matter. So this gets a little techy, but we can just fly through it. I think it's important, unless you guys want to dwell on it. It's fun to know because it starts to touch the breakdown of the Plancks and the quarks and the actual physics stuff. So let me just show you. So this is what, hold on. This is, my book is full of notes. But you see this shape right here, which is the 8 points of the star. So the micro attractors, they actually are at the base of the structure of matter, which is actually not too far from these tetrahedrons. The way that it shows in here, it's a three-sided pyramid on top and a three-sided pyramid at the bottom. That's the basic building block of matter. That's the geometric shape. When you look at it, it makes, is that the Star of David with the 8 points? Is that what the, it's definitely this,
the bottom one is.
That's the Star of David. Okay, this is the logo of Damanhur, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the basic building block of matter. And you know, now that I'm looking at my, and this is actually the tetrahedron in Nassim's crystal is the shape.
Art crystal?
The art crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you put two art crystals together, you would have the building block of matter. Yeah, because it's three-sided, right? It's three-sided.
It protects you from 5G too.
I know. We need to get 5G out of here, guys. I learned what it was about. It's all, anyways, we'll see after. So this is the basic building block of matter. So Nassim's physics, bang on with the basic building block of matter. And in this basic building block of matter, which is the Planck, I think it's smaller than the Planck. This is pre-Planck. But
It's the alliteration, that's all.
It's, I know, like if he would hear me butchering his science. But if you think of it, this is this is like, and you know what these 8, when we look at this, these 8 points and all these 8 lines, they're the 8 laws. The 8 laws, those energies of the parameters of the game that we're playing here are held in 8 points. Those are the 8 lines that make the construct of the universe. So it's completely in line with physics. It's so cool. Yeah, so that's it. So in the basic building block of matter, which are these 8 laws that are basically creating the shape, you have up to 5 mini micro attractors that are in there. So the real is permeating all these forms, and in these building blocks of matter, you have about 8 attractors. So 8 sparks of the real, if you want, that are emanating this structure. And then we can talk about, I think, you know what, unless you guys want to, I don't want to spend much more time, but I wanted to give you that so that when we build on the other concepts, we realize that they're not just people creating ideas, like it's built on a foundation of, you know, structure and knowledge and information. So do you guys have any questions up to now? Duncan, Elizabeth, Cindy? No. Duncan?
No, we're good.
You're good? Okay. So now time. Okay, time.
10 to 8.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so listen, we talked about the attractors, okay, the 6 elements of the universe. We talked about the attractors. It's the real and matter. We know what it's made up of. Great, yay. We reviewed the derivative laws. Yay, we know what they are: synchronicity, small atoms, complexity, chaos, divinity, fall of neutral events. We got those. We talked about the demiurges, which are the guys that carry the numbers, code the ideas, that then build the archetypes and create the actual forms. And we talked about the human primordial divinity. We know it, it's here, the nothingness. And now we get to talk about the 6th element of this universe of matter called the time sphere. And the time sphere, everything you knew about time, just throw it out the window. The time sphere is, I think it has very interesting concept, very statement about it. Think of all of nature. think of the complex, think of the variety of nature all around us, trees, flowers, mountains, all of that. Think that what you're going to learn of the time sphere, it's actually very similar to the nature sphere in nature. So there's so much variety in the sphere of time. And I am going to use my notes. Is that okay to take us through it? And then you guys can stop me. Oh, no, you know what? But you don't have a book. We should read the first two pages. Maybe I'll read them. I'll read them. Or because I think there's a lot that is said here, and it sets the stage on the information we can then build on. Okay. This chapter, are you guys okay if I read?
Can I read?
Oh, you froze again.
Okay, you read.
Hello.
Hmm. Hmm. Boy.
Okay, we're back.
Okay.
We're back. We're good. We're good. Let me just make sure that I'm not recording. Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to read this. Is that okay, you guys?
Yep.
Because I think there's a lot in here and I don't want to miss anything. This chapter will be composed of two distinct sections. In the first, we examine the body of knowledge about time that comes to us from the magic esoteric traditions, while in the second, we shall consider new theories about time which were developed following discoveries in this field made by modern research. So part one, the structure of time. So time is a territory on which the laws manifest. In order to exist, forms need a plane upon which to stand, and time fulfills this function. There is a dimension that we call the time sphere, which is actually time in its most microscopic version. Thanks to this time sphere, the laws can interact with each other at different points of this imaginary sphere and display a variety of different relationships in their interactions. So this is the territory where the different universes manifest. We can imagine them situated in different areas of the sphere, both on its surface as well as inside it. And I wanted to give you this so that you really expand your way of thinking of time. What we live is just one version here in our lives day to day. Okay, there's so much more, so many more layers to it. So I wanted to read this to bring that to you. So then our physical reality finds itself inside this more extensive time dimension. Though within our universe, time assumes a different function, one that is suitable in the context of the derivative laws. The function in this case is one of a holder or container of forms and or events. This function is not as passive as it may seem to be at first glance, as time is not limited to containing events, but also places them in relationship with various directions and interactions. Are you guys okay? Yeah, so just sink in, like, yeah, this is the new language. Yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good. Who needs, like,
Do you want to just say that last sentence again, please?
Yeah,
Do you guys
it's cool. The function in this case is not that of a holder or container of forms and or events. This function is not a...
Oh boy, did it. Do you want to finish the sentence, Duncan?
Oh, where are we? The function in this case is that of a holder or a container or forms and or events. This function is not as passive as it may seem to be at first glance, as time is not limited to containing events, but also places them in relationships with various directions and interactions.
Yeah, just like when I got suspended right now, that's perfect.
I know. And it's interesting because when you come back in, isn't it interesting, the rest of us?
Just right at
It's
the
like,
right point.
it's like nothing happened, but it's like, how is she doing that? It's all in relation
synchronicity.
to us.
That's it.
Oh, you're giving us an example. I get it. Okay.
Divine intervention.
Excellent teaching. Excellent teaching.
Oh my goodness. This is like, oh my, no, but isn't it good? Like, man, when you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I love this stuff. It's like, oh my God. Okay. The perception of time as provided by our senses represents only one of the many possible directions that events can take. Okay. So we limit time by our senses. Okay. We limit what we can perceive of time by our senses. Spiritual physics proposes a view of time which defines it as a territory that can be crossed. The concept of time flowing from the past towards the future is valid only on our own time direction, while the objective nature of events is that they exist in a state of contemporaneity, which we call the eternal present. Past, present, and future are simply different areas within this territory, which are all simultaneously present. Dun, 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 dun. No,
So does that mean that we can multitask? Because you said we limit time by our senses.
Yeah, wait. Let's leave it a little more, and you're gonna do more than multitask. Wait,
Then you can
we're all
multitask.
having, what do we call it? We're all polyamorous. We're on different timelines, different dimensions. So yeah.
Now I'm distracted.
Wait, we haven't got to the juicy part. Okay, so we got that, right? So events exist in a state of contemporaneity. That's a great word, actually, which we call the eternal present. Past, present, and future are simply different areas within this territory, which are all simultaneously present. Magic operates on the borders between the eternal present and the various possible directions. By using magic technology, for example, function can be taken from the eternal present and brought to our time direction, thus obtaining effects that appear paranormal because they fall outside of the cause and effect relationship that is in force on our planet of existence. Hi, Eva. Right on time. Yes. Eva, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're on the plane of time, and we just realized that past, present, and future are all happening at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. So magic operates on the border of this eternal present. Okay. So I'll just reread that again. Is that okay, you guys? Because these words are potent. Magic operates on the border between the eternal present and the various possible directions. By using magic technology, for example, functions can be taken from the eternal present and brought to our time direction, thus obtaining effects that appear paranormal because they fall outside of the cause and effects relationship that is in force on our planet of existence. At this point, we can say that there are two possible ways to view time. On one hand, we have the eternal present, a condition in which events are all simultaneously present, but they are static and consciousness is the only element that moves. On the other hand, we have time as a stream, a sequence in which events follow one another in a determined relationship. Obviously, the later is the most common met with concept of time, being the different translation of our sensory perception of events. But we have already seen how this perception is illusionary, since the tide that binds events is of a synchronic nature, not of causal one. Are you guys okay with that?
Question.
Yes.
So we talked, it says, on one hand, we have the eternal present, a condition in which are all simultaneously present, but they are static. Well, except for the film Arrival, I haven't seen that anywhere. So you have to have a certain level of enlightenment, I think, to be able to perceive time that way. And maybe we'll get there at some point, but I don't think we can view time like that.
Well,
given our current faculties, that is.
Enlightened beings that are enlightened, and some of us sometimes have had a feeling of being somewhere else. Like,
well, that might be the illusory that they refer to, saying this perception is illusory, meaning I guess sometimes you're getting different pictures when you're looking at something. You know,
yes.
You're seeing something else.
So
you're seeing that first section, but it's like you have to understand it a little better first.
I'm gonna, Duncan, I'm gonna offer you, as we continue, that you will see that there are beings and there's persons. I know that I've had experiences where I've been like, I've done this before, or I've seen something, or I perceive I'm somewhere different. And it's just a split moment. So one of the things that I don't know if it's going to be in here, I think it's in here, that we are all living on multiple timelines. This is going to be part of this chapter. We're all living in multiple timelines. So we are all having more than one experience. A spiritual master, or somebody who is a little bit more advanced also in the techniques, can perceive their other existences simultaneously. But we can only, most of us can only perceive once. We can get a glimpse. Sometimes we can get glimpses of that. Okay.
So is this similar to a déjà vu?
Yeah. Yes, it can be, but a déjà vu brings it into this timeline, into this experience of your life. I'm talking, you are having another experience on a complete, you might be on another planet having another experience. Wait, Cindy wants to say something. Go ahead, Cindy.
Something kept happening to me at Damanhur. Like we would be in class and we would learn something, and I felt like I already did it before, I already heard it, or it kept happening and happening again in Damanhur, where I felt extra that I had been there before. Yeah. Or I don't know, it was very strange.
Or with the teaching, or with these kinds of esoteric teaching. So maybe in another, you might be living on another planet where this teaching is what they teach at school. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's, you know, you have to realize 30 million years that this universe has been evolving. We have had, and we will get into this, blocks in our evolution. We were much more evolved. This knowledge was we worked with this knowledge. The Egyptians, all of the ancient civilizations have, because of what they were able to achieve technologically, had all this knowledge, you know. We're just, you know, been through events have forgotten. But yes, we are multidimensional souls. We only can remember one. Some of us maybe more, but most of us can only remember, except for these glimpses. And it is in here. So I want to go to that so that we can see. Okay, so where are we? Casual. Okay. In any case, despite this information, we must take our senses perception into consideration, since there is undoubtedly a functional motivation for our sensory organs have been developed in this way. So now let us explore a series of technical concepts which spiritual physics uses to interpret time. First of all, if we look at time as a greater container, the first thing to do in order to be able to understand anything in such a vast field is to divide it into smaller containers. So this is why I gave you the notes. Let me just see something before can be crossed. So, okay, right. So now we're going to break it down into the more technical things. Okay. I thought, let me just go through this a little bit. Let me just look at this for a second, you guys. I just want to see. I was checking the cross, measurement. Okay. Okay, yeah, no, okay, so you guys have the notes, right, that I gave you? From the, okay, I think we should go to them. But if you don't have it, don't worry, we'll just read them out loud. So we are going to divide the time territory, the time sphere, into three more digestible parts. The first one, we're going to call it the time packets, and we'll talk about what the time packets are about. The next one are the time branches, and then we're going to talk about the geography of time. So time has these three elements. And all of this is important to understand, because then the story of Falco coming from the future, being able to do operations here, all of a sudden it's not this voodoo stuff. When you understand that there's a structure that works like that, you can see how knowledge makes it possible for you to work in the time sphere in that way. And one of the things we're also going to hear is the temple has been used for time travel. They have Falco and others have time traveled to make impacts in timelines, because when he came to create a new timeline, he had to make sure that the history sustained the new timeline. So they had to time travel to do events to create the fabric to allow that event that happened to occur. So because Falco had the knowledge of all these, the spiritual physics that exist, this more abstract physics, he could play with the elements and teach them how to play with the element. That's why I say they're like a Hogwarts and a Star Wars, because this is information that allows us to do these things that seem way out there, but when you understand, all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense that it's possible. Did I lose you guys again? Give me a thumbs. You guys okay? Okay, good. Okay, so there's three, so we talked a little bit about the sphere, what it's like, and now there's these three different elements. So the time packets, the time branches, and the geography of time. Okay, in the time packets, what we find is their time packets are about 66 years long. They last 66 years. Can be made longer or shorter, depending on the density or complexity of that time packet. Okay, so remember, it's always about getting, evolution is complexity. of evolving. So 66 years to do and accomplish some things. And in these 66 years, there's these 4 elements that are at play. There's something called the rhythm of that time packet, which is like the tempo, the relationship of mass and energy. But more simply is, think of the 60s versus the 80s. You know, they're different kind of vibes, you know, or, you know, today, the speed of life today, the 60s versus today. So the rhythm is this kind of element of that time packet. It defines it. And it's called rhythm. It's the tempo. And tempo, when you use musical terms, but in the spiritual physics, it's more mass and energy. The dance between how much mass is in a material element versus the energy, the evolution of that form, okay, creates a rhythm. This is not so important, but it's to break down the fact that, hey, time travel is very possible when you have these elements that you know how to play with, okay? And so the time packet is 66 years, and there's these 4 elements: the rhythm, the capacity. The capacity is the quantity of mass that it can contain. The packets of time, the 66 years packets of time, are closed systems. So when they time travel and they want to enter this time packet, because by doing an intervention here, it will have an impact down the road, because they can tell by the way the rhythm and the capacity, all these elements work, they know when it's going to have an impact. When they want to come into this time packet to do an operation, they have to take some form out in order to come in. So that's why the capacity is important when you are a time traveler. You know, you can't just say, I want to go into this timeline. You have to take out, and I'm not sure how it defines itself, but if they wanted to come in this timeline, they might have to take out my cell phone, you know, and so there is an operation done to take out this from the time packet so that I can enter with a stone or something, okay? Just to give you an idea of why these concepts are mentioned, because they had to study them to do some of the operations they did. And then level of complexity impacts the movement of information in that timeline. So also, if there's a lot of evolution in that time packet and complexity, that's also important and an element to take into the account. And then we have points of divine attention. And this is a very interesting topic. So we talked about at the beginning. Are you guys following me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about the divinities that were revered by the different people of the world, all these religions. These divinities have a power and have an impact on our evolution. And what happens in what happens is these divinities are like us in the way, you know, we blink, we close our eyes and we open them again, and we do it very often. But these divine forces, when they blink and when their eyes are open for what we say are 3 or 4 years. And why do I mention this? So points of divine attention, maybe we'll read it so that we can go through it together. I don't want to lose you guys. Capacity, levels of complexity, and points of divine attention. Let me just see this. Give me a second, guys. With time packets, with capacity, level of complexity. Okay. Okay, let me, okay, so I think for the time packets, actually, that might have been it. And then we have points of divine attention. So sorry, under the time packets, you have these three elements. So we might have to correct that, because now that I'm looking at it, I know it's a little techy, but just bear with me. So you have the time packets have the rhythm, the capacity, and the level of complexity, right? And we have the example of the 60s versus the 80s versus right now. You know, that gives you an idea of what happens in these time packets. They become sort of, they have their own frequency, their own way of feeling in time. And then we have this element, yes?
Just quickly, and so this points of divine attention, is that a fourth element or no?
You know what, I'm looking at it, hold on. I'm gonna say, let's leave it. It is a fourth.
Okay.
Because you know what, it defines the time packets. It makes it begin and it makes it end. But let's read it together because it's an important point and I don't want to simplify it. Okay, so point of divine attention. In the passage between one time packet and the following one, there is always a shorter period of variable duration, but usually not lasting more than 3 to 4 years. That is of particular importance, as during this phase, there is divine attention being paid to the events that occur. Okay, so it is, let's leave it within the time packet, because it creates the boundary between one time packet and another. So during the time packet, the 66 years, we are having an
it's like a comma. It's like a comma in a sentence.
Yes.
A 3-year comma.
Yes.
There. See that picture?
Yeah.
So those are the time packets you see, 10, 50, and 100. That's the complexity in each time packet going into the future. And then they're separated by those divine
Points of divine attention.
yeah.
And I want you guys to have this sink in, because I think this is really important. So here we are, 66 years can be a lifetime for some of us. And, you know, we are working really hard and, you know, yay. And then there's these 3 or 4 years in between where you have divine attention. And guess what's really important on the fabric of time? Those 3 or 4 years, because when the divinities have their eyes open, whatever, you know, you are, so, you know, we're talking, you blink your eyes, and if you miss something when you're blinking your eyes shut, when you open them again, you're not going to have that information. So you're going to taint that slide with the information before that you have. So these 3 or 4 years when the divine forces have their eyes open, everything that happens is much more potent. So if you want to do a magical operation, you come in and you do it when those eyes are open, because the impact on the timeline is much more potent on the fabric of time. So, but I think we should read it because it's fun. So in the passage between one time packet and the following one, there is always a shorter period of variable duration, but usually not lasting more than 3 to 4 years. That is of particular importance, as during this phase, there is divine attention being paid to the events that occur. In this case, we are talking about territorial divinities that perceive reality rhythmically, the actual tempo of which is linked to the succession of time packets. We could also say the opposite meaning, that the periodicity of divinity's perception defines the confines of the time packets, which begin in one moment of divine attention and complete themselves in the successive one. But this is not really so important because there is no actual cause-effect relationship between the two events, but more of a concomitant rapport. Okay, that's not so important. But now let us try to better understand what divine attention really is. So imagine that a divinity has an eye through which it perceives our reality. In this case, we are referring to all the divine forces created by man, which are each juxtaposed upon a specific territory and linked to a specific people, civilization, or human aggregation. As with our own visual perception, the eye cannot be open constantly, but must close now and then and blink. This means there is a fraction of time in which the eye does not see, and everything that happens in that period of time goes unperceived. In the case of our perception of a human blink, this time is only a fraction of a second. So this generally is not significant for us. Given that in such a small amount of time, events cannot manifest, which have beginnings and an end, and will no longer be visible when the eye opens again. But in the case of divine perception, that eye remains closed for an entire time packet, while only the part of that period that is perceived is the point of divine attention, a period of just a few years. Just as you blink and is insignificant to you, the 66-year time period is not significant for a divinity's perception of reality. So it's really sad, actually. But it is quite a different story from our point of view, because we are talking about a period that could contain our entire lifetime. So summing up, we have seen that if we observe the sequence of time packets, we shall find, besides variation in the rhythms and in the complexity, the alteration of time zones that are now being perceived by a divinity, the periods within the time packets and time zones falling along the borders between one time packet and another, in which the events are the object of the particular phenomenon that we have defined as divine attention. Now, if we focus on the density of events, and therefore on the complexity that they produce, there is a great deal of difference between these two situations. While based on the consequence they generate, the events that take place within a time packet have relatively insignificant weight, since their manifestation is not under divine perception, which we have seen in the most important type, is the most important type of perception possible in our universe. While those that indeed manifest at points when the eye of the divinity is open assume a much higher density and are able to generate consequences that last for an eternal period of time. That is more, while the first are easily modifiable by the divine perception, itself, or by the altering of time branches and time trials, the later are not modifiable and have a greater historical weight. So just to say that if you're going to do magical operations, you want to do it when the time packet is finishing and the divine forces are opening to their eyes and perceiving. And magical operations are also done in Damanhur to awaken these divinities so that they can perceive, like when they did the change on the plane of time, the split on the plane of time, they woke up a divinity in order to have that be perceived. And other operations that they do, they work on this if you know how. So I just wanted to give you that more of a little bit of a story. I don't want to get too caught up, but it's fun to realize that, you know, if we were all on another planet where this stuff was being taught in elementary school, we'd all be, you know, bigger wizards than we are. Was that, did you guys like that? Would you want to add something, Duncan?
I was gonna say, how do you know when the window's open and when it's closed?
They mention, I know that let me just say, hold on. I'll give you the time where they've done this. Hold on. Virtual time packets. Hold on. Give me a second, guys. Okay, so I think they know the 66 years is an idea, and if you can, if you know how to evaluate the the rhythm, the capacity, and what was the other one? The level of complexity of a time packet, you know when it's coming to an end, because it can only hold 100% complexity.
So we probably are at that state right now with all the complex things happening in the world.
It's interesting because I also believe that the Damanhurians know how to, when they use this information, know how to wake up divinities. So they might interfere with a time packet by waking up a divinity earlier, because they're going to do the triad operation, or they're going to do a certain operation. So they're going to wake up these divinities using this kind of knowledge. And maybe they go into a time packet and they add a bunch of complexity. I don't know. I'm just telling you that I think they use this to manipulate things, you know, to evolve. And these are, I don't know, I'm just theorizing, because I know that when they finished one of their operations, they had to open the eyes of a divinity to do it. So I don't know. So the time pocket, the timelines we know when the divinities had their eyes open, one was in 1967 when the separation of the planes happened. The next one was in 1997 to 2001 when they separated the synchronic lines. And the third one was when they did this concatenation technology. So if you add that, 1967 to 1997 is only 30 years. It's not 66 years.
No.
So they must have done something to open the eyes of the divinity.
Alessandra?
Yeah.
What is the separation of the planes? In 1967 you have there?
Oh, yeah, okay. So you know what, now we're going to answer that, Elizabeth. So we finished the three points of the time was the time packets, which we just completed. Now we're going to talk about the time branches, and Elizabeth, the separation of the plane of time is going to come under the time branches.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about the geography of time. Okay, so the time branches, and I'm just going to read, I'm going to read the notes, okay? So that the first part we just did was a time packet. We've got these packets of time, 66 years, and they're followed by opening of divine attention. Oh no.
Oh no.
She's frozen.
Yeah, she just got, you just got unfrozen.
Okay, hold on. Okay, you guys are back? You're back.
Oh.
Okay, so we did, the first one was a time packet, 66 years. We've got capacity, those four elements at play: rhythm, capacity, complexity, and period of divine attention that block it off. And we know that they can alter them because we have, you know, indications that they were shortened for these operations. Okay, so at least that's one aspect. Now we're going to talk about the time branches, which will answer your question of separation of the planes of time. So time is like branches. So you have the main branch of time, and then you have secondary lines, and they're called trial times. So branches can become insignificant or significant. And they do that if branches develop in a lower level of complexity than their main branch, they get reabsorbed by the main branch. So think of a tree with a little sprout, you know, shoot from it. If it's not creating enough complexity, it just gets reabsorbed back by the main branch. If branches become more complex, they absorb the main branch. If they have a similar complexity but are different, they create parallel timeline. These branches then become main trunks and can have their own branch. There are worlds parallel to ours, which is with its own complex structure. This is fine with complexity that works towards evolution through various forms. Important point, and I'm going to review all this. I'm just going to give you the points, and then we'll talk about it. Important points. We are all present contemporaneously on multiple timelines. Our soul has no problem doing this. Our conscious attention focuses on one of ourselves at a time. But our consciousness can move from one to the other. Example of keys. In magic, being able to move between these time branches allows us to manipulate events and increase complexity, which means we can reach our goals using less time. You guys there? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah. Forms, how it acts in the time sphere. Forms, building blocks of matter, has 6 possible choices at every moment, or 6 branches of time. Once one is selected, they merge into one. Here, okay. The more complex forms determine the relevant timeline to follow. The less complex forms go along for the ride. They get absorbed by the main branch, also our consciousness. If more complex forms are on the branch, they leave to go to lessen the load. Time travel works on these 2 points. Okay, forget that. Okay, so let me explain this to you. So you talked about what they did on the plane of time. So because Falco came from a period 600 years from now, he came because at that point, time stopped. And we're going to touch that in the next section. And he came back at this moment in time to create another branch. To create another branch, he to hopefully create more complexity on it so that it can go beyond the 600 years and absorb the other branch. Because the other branch, we went poof. we were gone. So a question I had, there's a couple of them. The timeline was done in 1967. Those of us that might have been born pre-1967, are we doing 2020 again? Just something to ponder. So think about that, okay? So for those of us that think about it, if the timeline in 1967 got split, if we were born before 1967, the timeline wasn't split yet. So for those of us on the edge, you know, it's like 1967, it's like, okay, well, what timeline am I on? Then you feel that.
Yeah, something got bunkered up.
What have you been drinking?
No, no.
Say that again. So if I was born before 1967,
the timeline was not split. So we
Okay.
would have done 2020 already. Okay, so Falco comes from the year 2005, let's say 2600, okay?
Right.
2600. He comes back and in 1967, he splits and creates another timeline. If you're born pre-1967, you lived on the timeline that went out to 600 years. You get it? Like, think, okay? So are you doing 2020 again? Is my question. Like I asked that. Cindy, go ahead.
Don't we just take a left? don't we
Have
just,
more turkey. Yeah.
no, in 1967, don't we just take a left?
Yeah, right. But but if the branch is there, yeah, okay, we just would have taken a left. I like the other idea, that we might be doing this twice. So, anyway, okay, that was good. Thank you. We can just take a left. Yes. But the other timeline is still there. It's thicker than ours. Ours is new. So that timeline is still has a present. We have not absorbed it all. We need to get out in front of it. We need another 600 years, and we need to make sure that we create enough complexity to absorb it into us.
Because Falco was born in this lifetime before 67.
Yes.
And he died when he was only 63.
Yeah, he died in 2013.
13.
So 60. Yeah, he would have been, I think he was 17 when he did
On our
this. I think he was a young pup when he did this. So that's the separation of the timelines. And it's really important that we continue to create more complexity and density on this timeline. We are also in the shadow of that other branch. So whenever we have Chernobyl, the tsunami, and Fukushima, those events, I've been told, are shadow events from the previous timeline, where there might have been nuclear wars, they might have been catastrophic events, and we are just because this timeline, you know, when a black branch splits, they're still pretty close at the beginning, right? So the chances of us being reabsorbed by the bigger branch is great. So it's really important that we continue to get further and further apart, because we're young, you know, 67, we're what, 33, 53, 54 years, we have 600 years. So we're just at the 1%, you know, 10%, not even 1% of this new timeline that we need to create. And also I have to share one of the reasons that I want to bring people and make people aware of Damanhur is Damanhur was not on the old timeline. Damanhur is new, it's on this timeline. So the more people know about it, the more you know, information gets put on the new timeline. You know, it's the one thing I know was not on the other timeline. You know, Damanhur was not on that timeline. So I support it also because it's part of this operation. So that's the operation he came to do, to separate the timeline. And that's explained by this technology, this time branches, main trunks, and then smaller branches.
We did that when he was 17 years old.
I think he did this pre-Damanhur. Because yeah,
He'd be 17 years old if he was born in 1950.
Yeah.
Oh, smart guy.
Yeah, he was a little evolved.
Yeah.
He was a little, well, listen, we would all be smart if we came in with our full, you know, memory of
all that knowledge. Yeah.
all our knowledge. So yes, Cindy.
Did you see online that Damanhur was prepared for this virus? Falco had them all set up. They were getting out their remedies. He had them all prepared for this.
Oh, I didn't know that. No, that I didn't know. I know I've been sending, you know, one of the girls that lives there is a doctor, and she studied with me in India, and I have been sending her all the information I'm getting, and also the medical therapeutics that are being used. Unfortunately, you know, it's not being talked about very much, but there's many doctors that are having fantastic results. So hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, zinc, there's people that are having, did you guys get my email? No.
Oh yeah, I watched that. It was awesome. That German doctor, absolutely.
It's like,
great.
It's like And I think we are going to, I'm going to send you guys Dr. Shiva too. He's amazing. He said, put everybody back at work. He gives this simple, he sent a letter to Trump. He says, put everybody back at work. These are the 5 vitamins. This is how you prescribe it for the ones that are most at risk, less at risk, $20 a month. I'm like, okay. So there's lots of good stuff coming. I think I think there's another operation going on behind the closed doors. I think this virus is going to fizzle out. Anyways, I'm optimistic. Just to say, there's a lot of therapeutics that people can use. So that's the time branch. And is that clear on why the timeline? Is that, Elizabeth, does that answer your question?
Well, no, you threw me off because then Cindy said to the left, and what does that mean now?
Listen,
I lost it.
Okay, you lost it. So let's do it this way. Let's do it. Let me get something else here.
When she said to the left, I just saw Bugs Bunny pop his head out. I should have made that left at Albuquerque. Memories.
You're so funny.
They never leave you.
Okay, I'm going to leave this. You know, there's some of these topics that you have to trust your own interpretation, that you have to feel for yourself, you know, because remember, diversity is really good for creating multiple forms. So we got to have our own points of view. But I'm going to give you what excites me. So here's the 600 years out. And here's 1967. And bing, there's another little thing. So I said, this thing is still out there. So are other people living on this timeline? Like there's some people that are so like unevolved. Like, are they all still living on this timeline? And are we living on this one? Or do we go back and forth between the two? Because there's an overlap. There's a 15-year overlap. This timeline already did 2020. If we were born prior to 1967, yeah, we could have done the turn. But did we do the turn after we did this timeline? Like, that's the fun part.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
What do you think? So Cindy is clear. Forget it. I just did the turn. I didn't do this one.
Yeah, but again, who's to choose?
It's personal, I think. I think it's personal. Eva, okay, Cha-Cha, but okay, Elizabeth, Duncan, what do you think you did? I mean,
Maybe
I
it's
had Expo all summer. I don't remember that part.
No, I'll jump too. Sure. I don't want to be a masochist and do 2020 again. Sure.
Okay, Cha-Cha, what do you think? Cha-Cha's think.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I saw us, before I knew about this, I saw us splitting a long time ago. About 2007, I had this vision that we would split. And I think that's what we're doing now.
Wow.
Yeah, because we cannot coexist with what's going on. And what you said earlier, something about that demiurge soul atom stuff, it was like, that's how we are creating. We are creating that. We are creating. I can only absorb so much of this. It's my first night, but it to me, we cannot coexist the way the world is going right now. And I don't want to take us in a whole other trajectory, but just because it doesn't work. And I'm seeing right now, a lot of people are very, very afraid. Yeah. And a lot of people are creating new earth. So how can we coexist? Anyway, and I think probably we should stop there. I don't want to take up the whole night, but I think this is really fascinating. So maybe that's what it is. And there's shadow bits of it. We're still, you know, that pull
to the other timeline.
The level of complexity.
Yeah.
We're into timelines, you know.
Yeah.
At the moment, perhaps, you know.
Well, it's interesting you say that because last year when I went to Gargano, I was with Crotalo, And I think it's important to share. And Crotolo was really very negative. And he goes, the fear is that there's been this split, lots of energy has been put, right, in creating. This is the old one where we fall off the edge of the precipice and we don't know what happens. And here's the new one. And what he was saying to us is, we're getting really close to be absorbed by the big one. And I go, why do you say that? And he goes, there's been some events that lead us to believe that, we're not as far as we were before. Now, with this event, because this is a divine, you cannot have an event of this magnitude, whether the powers that be want to think they created it, without a divine intervention. I mean, this is layered on top of whatever other geopolitical gook is happening, is of divine. This is a divine event because it has stopped everybody in its track. And it has stopped everybody. Some people are suffering, but we're all at home with pajamas and food and water to drink. Like most, I mean, I'm not talking about third world countries, but I'm saying that there's no imminent catastrophe except for that few that can get really sick. Yeah. So my understanding from the Damanurians that I've spoken to is, wow, like this is an opportunity to really take off, to really split, if people take this quiet time to reflect, remember how important we are to the soul atom, how we hold ourselves in these moments are so important. The meditation we did, anything that you do and you can stay positive and you can stay optimistic and you can give love and joy to what you're doing, and this moment that you're having to go inside is so valuable for this moment, because this is a divine, nobody could have done this in this way. If it would have been all man-made, we'd all be suffering, we'd all have no food, this is divine. This is like really a divine moment. So I think it's a big opportunity. I think right now they're very optimistic that it might be going in another direction. So that's my discussion with them. They're very optimistic about what they're seeing. Yes.
I think what we need to watch out for is emptiness. Like, I've never been, even though I don't work regularly anymore, I'm always doing something. And ever since I learned about the enemy and emptiness, it just sort of gives you that incentive to make sure you're doing something that's more collectively beneficial to everybody, or just, learn something. Don't sit around and, because there's going to be a lot of that too. So, because that's where the dark forces get into those people that are lost, but hopefully the numbers are shifting and there are more enlightened people. It's growing. But I think because, if you just count by numbers, yeah, there are very few enlightened people on the planet, but like synergy and the Mandela effect and all the things that you do when you do things together is so much more powerful. We need to keep telling people that, or people that'll listen, because a lot of people still don't. But when they do, I mean, now's the time. This is it.
And isn't that where that synergistic, we're going this way?
Yeah.
And we pull the timeline, right? Because we're strong that way. We're stronger.
Yeah.
And love is always stronger, right? The light is bigger. And what you gave the car and the beer,
Yes,
pull everybody. And that's what we thought was going to happen in 2012, right? We're going to pull everybody through.
Yeah.
Right?
I think those beliefs are there because somewhere innately in all of us, we can all perceive that this potential is there, and so it's not by chance that we have these ideals. We all want a better world. We all want. So those ideas give us hope, and they probably, Chacha, create these opportunities, because you have to have first the emotion. You know, thoughts create. I don't know if we touched that today in my summary. I didn't. But like in the world of ideas, thoughts create. We create matter by having our thoughts. So when we are having these thoughts of 2012, okay, so it might not come on time on 2012, but if that feeling is so strong, if that thought form had not been out there, maybe this jump today couldn't have happened.
Oh,
Rosalind again.
she just does it for effect, right?
Oh.
Arms up in the air, you know.
It's all part of the show, guys.
Yeah.
Eva, do you want to say something?
That was cute.
Guys, listen, it's almost 9 o'clock. We want to, I don't think we should, you want to, no, let's not tackle. Let's leave it, let's leave the third part of the geography of time. That's part of the first section. Do you guys feel more comfortable with the concept of time and these ideas? Time is feeling, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, so we can build on this. We'll let it digest, and we'll get together in 2 weeks. We'll do it the same, Monday or Wednesday night. What's better for you guys? Monday works for me.
Yeah,
Monday,
or
because
Wednesdays.
Nassim is Wednesday,
Wednesday.
right?
So let's do
Oh,
Monday.
yeah.
He's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to join. Thank you for, you know what, actually, I
thank
should
you.
send, Duncan, can you send me the link?
I
Able
did
to.
already.
You send me the link?
I did. Today,
Okay.
just when you were talking.
Okay. So I might do an email blast again.
Yes. Yeah, send it to me. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and then you can join. And yeah, Nassim felt very vulnerable on that call. I think they're being hit with this
I
funding.
missed it. Yeah. Is there a replay of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I have your email. I have it.
Well,
So
if not, send it to me, Duncan, and I can send it to Chacha.
Thank you.
So I think let's finish there. Let's finish, I'm going to finish the recording here. And if Susan wants to join us,
Yeah.
we can give her this recording. Oh no, I can summarize it for her. Do you want to stop?